All right, today we're diving into something that is, well, pretty out there. It's a text that takes a hard look at the very foundations of modern physics and argues that a single, simple mistake sent science down a completely wrong path. So, let's get into it. The entire argument we're about to explore really boils down to this one single question. The author of this text believes the answer is a huge resounding yes, and to fix it, they say, we have to go all the way back to the very beginning. So, what is that beginning? Well, it's a single, non-negotiable rule, an axiom that their entire critique is built on. The author lays it all out with this German phrase, ohne Materie is nichts. It means simply, without matter, there is nothing. Now for them, this isn't just some philosophical thought. It is the bedrock of reality. Everything, and I mean everything, starts and ends with physical matter. And this idea has a huge consequence. It means we can't talk about things like motion or energy as if they're separate entities just floating around out there. In this view, they're just descriptions of what matter is doing. Motion is a property of matter. It can't exist by itself. Now, to really get a grip on this, the author uses a super simple example that, we've all seen before, a Newton's cradle. Let's break down what's really going on here, at least from this perspective. We all see a wave travel through the spheres, right? But hang on. From this point of view, is it really a wave? Or is that just a convenient label we use for a sequence of physical events? One sphere hits the next, which hits the next. There's no wave without the spheres. The wave isn't a thing. It's what the things are doing. And that's the big takeaway right there, summed up in another quote. Motion is a phenomenon of matter. So all the forms of energy we see, a wave in the ocean, an electrical current, they're all just different ways that matter is moving. They depend completely on that matter for their very existence. Okay, so now that we have that foundation, let's look at what the author says is the single biggest conceptual mistake in the history of physics. Sounds weird, right? But according to our source, that is exactly what modern physics did. They argue that a subtle little shift in how we think about heat created this cascade of errors. The mistake was turning an action, motion, into a thing. Okay, so check this out, because this slide really nails the whole conflict. The author argues physics went off the rails when it started treating the effect of motion, what we call heat, as if it were a new kind of substance. You see, in their view, when you rub your hands together, the motion doesn't become heat. It's just transferred to the particles in your hands, which makes them move faster. The motion is transferred, not transformed into something new. And once you accept that this one idea, that motion can turn into a substance, was a mistake, well, the author argues that a whole lot of modern science starts to unravel. Yep, we're going there, right for the most famous equation in all of physics. The claim is that the entire justification for this formula is built on that same fundamental error we've been talking about. I mean, really think about it from this perspective. If energy and mass are two sides of the same coin, like the equation says, it means that energy, which they say is just a form of motion, can literally be converted into matter. For the author, that's just impossible. An action can't become a thing. And it doesn't stop there. The critique then takes aim at another huge idea from Einstein's relativity, the concept that an object's mass actually increases the faster it goes. From this point of view, that idea is just completely absurd. The text hones in on this idea that a particle, as it gets close to the speed of light, could balloon in mass by 40,000 times. 40,000 times. To put that in perspective, that's like saying a bowling ball could suddenly weigh as much as a freight train. Yeah, the author has a bit of fun with this one, sarcastically calling it a mass perpetual motion machine. The question is simple. Where is all this new stuff coming from? How can you create 40,000 times more matter just by making it move faster? They see it as a total logical impossibility. And that's really the final nail in the coffin from the author's point of view. It's not just a little wrong, it's, well, in their words, Gipfel des Unsinns, the absolute pinnacle of nonsense, the most absurd conclusion you could possibly get from a flawed scientific idea. So, okay, if these huge, foundational ideas are being called nonsense, what does that say about the physics that's been built on top of them for the last 100 years? The author kind of traces this whole thing back to a specific moment in time, this so-called crisis in physics around the turn of the 20th century. This, they argue, was the moment when the solid mechanical view of the world was just thrown out the window for something way more abstract and way more detached from physical reality. And this all leads to a pretty brutal takedown of modern physics. The argument is that because its very foundations are no longer tied to the realness of matter, physics itself has gotten lost. It sees chaos and uncertainty in the universe because, well, its own theories have become chaotic and absurd. Look, at the end of the day, this explainer isn't about whether this critique is right or wrong. It's about something bigger. It's about showing how if you challenge just one single foundational assumption, like whether matter always comes first, the entire structure of how we see the universe can look completely, radically different. It really makes you wonder, what other axioms do we just accept without even thinking about them?